Hi, I'm Amy and this is A-Star Reads, and it's time for week 7 of the Battle of the Children's Picture Books. Hey, it's Editing Amy making a very early appearance in this video. However, I want to let you know that this is a video that should have come out quite a long time ago, I guess in March. Week 7 of my children's picture book battle. This was because I was taking a children's literature course and I was rating all the picture books I had been reading. So I'm finally catching up on this video series. I'm gonna put the week 7 out there now. There's not gonna be a week 8. At the end of the video, I say like, let's see what happens on week 8. I did not pick up any more children's picture books at the end of that term. I was like, nope, I'm done. I read like over 70, I was done. I wasn't gonna pick up any more. So instead, the next video you'll see for the children's picture book battle series is gonna be the finale, and I will take the top 7 from each of these videos and I will rank them, and we'll find out which of all the children's picture books I read during that term was my favorite children's picture book, which is gonna be hard because I don't like having to pick a favorite among my favorites. That's pretty difficult. So stay tuned and keep an eye out for that last video. This week I had great books. In fact, the lowest rated, number 8, was a 4-star. So even though I'm having to rate it number 8, it still was a really amazing book. So I can't wait to share these books with you. I think these are a great selection, and let's just get started. Book number 8, and by no means a bad book, is Interstellar, Cinderella. This is by Deborah Underwood, illustrated by Meg Hunt, and I really love this. I wanted to pick up some sci-fi because I don't think maybe I've read one other sci-fi picture book, and this is a fairy tale retelling. So this, of course, is about Cinderella, and if you've read Cinder, The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer, then you basically got this book, just a little different. You know, obviously it's different, but she's an interstellar mechanic, and her dream is to work on spaceships. And so there's this space parade that's happening, and her evil stepmother and stepsisters keep her from going, but she calls for her fairy god robot and is able to go, and of course meets a prince, just as you can imagine how Cinderella goes. So it didn't feel too futuristic that you didn't also still have that fairy tale vibe, and I really enjoyed that. I think that the story was cute, it was fun, it was what you'd expect from a Cinderella retelling. Some of the reviews said that it was a little too heavy-handed on the feminist agenda, but I mean, I don't mind that. I think that was great. I love that it had sort of a maker vibe to it, because you've got this young girl who wants to be a mechanic and she has skills that other girls her age don't have, like her evil stepsisters. So I thought that this was wonderful. I thought this was lovely. I liked the message, and I thought it was perfectly appropriate for young girls. I think that the reason this was maybe the lowest on my list today, aside from the others just having a little more of an emotional impact for me, and that does sway my opinion quite a bit. I thought that the story was good, but I thought it could have been a little better. That's all. And so it just, like I was saying with some of these adventure stories, I love the highs and the lows, but I also want that emotional connection to the characters. And although I liked Cinderella, I didn't have the same level of emotional investment in her as I did for a lot of these other characters in the books that I'll be talking about. Very fun one though, and I can see kids loving this because of the art, and the story is a simple one, but a very classic one. Book number 7, this is an interesting one because this is for much younger children, and this is a translated work from this Japanese author and illustrator Taro Gomi, and it's called I Really Want to See You, Grandma. And I think that the artwork in this was different, and not typically artwork that I would be like, oh, I love it. The artwork was stunning and, you know, all those things. However, I really enjoyed the relationship between the grandmother and the granddaughter. I loved how silly it was, how fun it was. It has special meaning to me because I was very close to my grandmother when she was alive. I could see us in these two characters, and that made a big difference for me. But it's also just showing this familial love and how these two characters just can't wait to spend time together. And the way it was conveyed in the story I thought was just funny and cute. Basically, the story is about this young girl who wants to go visit her grandma, and her grandma wants to go visit her, and they leave to go see each other, but they both leave at the same time, and they take different modes of transportation, and they keep missing each other. So they're basically going back and forth. I thought that was a fun concept, and I liked this, and it did give me really warm feelings because it made me think about my grandma. Okay, book number 6. This one actually, for the art, it would probably be number 1 on my list today because I love the art so much. It's stunning. It's Me and Mama by Cozbi Cabrera. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but that's how you spell the name. And I just love this very simple but very heartwarming story about this little girl who loves her mama and just wants to spend a day with her. And so it's kind of like a book of observations a little bit. It's written in a lyrical form, so this is more poetry. Every page, the girl's saying like, now we're gonna go brush our teeth, now we're gonna drink our coffee, but it's the way she observes the day and how she compares herself to her mother, who's someone she emulates, that I really appreciate it because little kids do this. So this is probably for a younger audience. You might be able to draw in an older audience to talk about the artwork and the actual whole book. But I think as far as the writing goes and the story within this, it would be really appealing to a much younger audience. And so even though I did like the lyrical writing, I didn't love it as much as I loved the paintings and the picture and the artwork. And I almost feel like this would work as a wordless picture book. I think that you could get away with not adding any of the prose in it and it would still work really well because you could make those comparisons and you could see the things that are happening in their day and the progression of all the things that are going on. And I'm not trying to say the author shouldn't have added the poetry. I'm just thinking about the art itself and how impactful that was for me. And I just thought it was so gorgeous. So this is my book number 6. Book number 5 is actually a really popular book, and that's Hair Love by Matthew A. Cherry, illustrated by Vashti Harrison. And what's interesting about this is I know that I've watched the short video I think I watched the short video a while ago that kind of goes with this book. I think that the video was created based off the book. And so this one has gorgeous artwork, as we had seen from Vashti Harrison when she illustrated Solway. I love the story behind this. I love this relationship between this girl and her father. The conversation behind hair culture was very important, and I think it was wonderful to see this relationship the young girl has with her hair and how she's able to express herself with her hair, but then how she can share that with her parents, and it's part of who she is. And so I really do love this. I love the conversation. The only reason it's a little lower on the list is because I remember the video having more information than the book has. So there's parts of this, especially towards the end, I feel like it ends pretty abruptly. Yes, okay, so I just went back and watched the video, the short video, which is an Oscar-winning video. So if you haven't checked out Hair Love, you can find it on YouTube. It's beautiful, it'll make you cry, it's very heartwarming. And this is beautiful and will make you cry as well, but there are major plot points that are in the video that are not in this book. I think that's why when I read this, I was like, there's something missing, there's something missing. And I could feel it, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I think it's a really big aspect in the movie, and so that's probably why this didn't quite hit as hard as the movie did. So I do like this book, and I do think you will get all the things you need to get out of it. But if you really want an amazing 5-star story, watch the video because it is so good, and it adds that extra bit at the end that gives it all the emotional impact. Okay, book number 4 is a really exciting one because this is And Tango Makes 3 by Justin Richardson and Peter Parnell, illustrated by Henry Cole. And Shell told me I should read this one. And this is a book that's been heavily banned because of the conversation that it has around male-male relationships. And what's funny about this, I mean, I guess it's not funny, because what is interesting about this is that I've taken several animal sexuality classes, and this is incredibly tame. This is so incredibly tame as far as what kind of relationships animals have out in nature. But I think that this was done really well. I think it's beautiful. There is nothing offensive in this book. It's sweet and charming, and it's really about the love of these 2 penguins. And this is a real story. This is a nonfiction story. In the New York City Zoo, there were these 2 male penguins that became partners, and they really wanted to have a baby. But then they were struggling because they thought if they just take a rock and sit on it for a while, they would get a baby, and it wasn't working for them. So the zookeeper helped them out with an egg that needed a home, and they were able to form their own family. It was good to see how positive this story came across and how positive the reaction was within the story. I know that there was a lot of negativity about this book worldwide. I'm very sad to say that because I think that this is a very sweet and loving story about a family. Next, book number 3. Book number 3 was a gorgeous book called I Talk Like a River by Jordan Scott and Sydney Smith. I changed my rating actually because I was rating it a little bit lower, not much, just a little bit lower, but then I reread it and I listened to an audiobook. There's actually an audiobook that goes with this by Jordan Scott, who is a man who does have a stutter. And this is all about a young boy who is dealing with his stutter and dealing with moments he wants to be nonverbal because he's so stressed and in so much pain about the fact that he gets looked at differently and kind of laughed at by his classmates. It talks about how painful it is for him to create word sounds, and some days are worse than others. So on one of the days that is really bad for him, his dad takes him to the river and explains to him how he talks like the river. So you kind of see how he figures out a way to accept that part of himself and identify with something that is natural, that makes him feel like what he is doing is natural. So I think this is a very important book to introduce to students, to children. And for one, it's important because there are going to be children who are going to feel like they're struggling with something like a stutter or being nonverbal and not being able to find the beauty in that and find what's unique about them. And this was a really good example of that. But then also I think it's good for other children because recently I went into a class where one of the students was nonverbal and their classmates were very interested in them. They were very curious about them, but they didn't know how to properly address that child. And it was really difficult because there was this disconnect in communication, and the nonverbal child was trying to reach out and trying to communicate with the other children, and the other children were not sure how to react. And what I could see from this child who was not understanding the communication from the nonverbal child was that they wanted to understand. They had compassion. They wanted to feel empathy. There was no making fun of this other child. It wasn't that at all. But they couldn't figure out how to relate to that child, and they were very curious. And so I think books like this are opportunities for children who don't quite understand the other child to see how that child sees the world and see how there are other ways to learn to communicate with that child. For that reason, I think that these books are important and valuable. This was written in a lyrical form, and I think that the poetry was gorgeous. I also think the artwork in this was stunning because you see how the artist used the artwork here, regular setting, but when the child felt like they were being looked at, it kind of got a little more fuzzy and blurry because all of a sudden the pressure was put back on them and you see everybody's looking back at the child because they've been asked to say something. Kind of like when your brain goes, whoa, 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 I'm feeling nervous. You go from this regular scene where he's feeling okay to this scene where it becomes more fuzzy and scary and unclear because he is dealing with his own emotional internal fears at that moment. And so I loved how the artist did that. I love how the artist put the emotion and put the feelings of the child that we're learning about in the artwork. Book number 2 is The Three Pigs by David Wiesner. This is an interesting book because it's a multi-plane book. And what that means, what multi-plane means, is that the characters in the book come out of the book and they start interacting with the actual book as opposed to within the story that they're in. I picked this up because my textbook had recommended it as a good example of multi-planes within children's picture books. And I wanted to check out what that meant. And I loved this. I thought it was so creative. I think this is considered postmodern, whatever. somewhere I read something like that. This is a postmodern fairy tale retelling of The Three Little Pigs. And so it starts out exactly like The Three Little Pigs does. The wolf coming to the first pig's house. It's made out of straw. You're still used to this story, but the pig goes, no, I'm going to do something different. And he actually comes out of the book. Not literally, but out of the story that is being told. The pig and their siblings start going on this adventure throughout other books, like outside of the story, and goes through other fairy tales or rhymes or fables. And it's just so fun to see the artwork change as you change the story. It's so fun to see these pigs interact in different ways than how they would interact in the story because they're interacting with the book, they're interacting with you as an audience. And I think that's clever, I think it's fun, and I thought it was really well done in this. I just thought it would be such a fun book for kids. I think a lot of kids would love this, and I could see me, little Amy, being thrilled by this book. I would have so much fun with this as a kid because I liked that concept and sort of the puzzle feel of it. There's something so different and it takes you away from the original story, and I would have thought that was so clever. All right, book number 1. Book number 1 is Prince and Knight by Daniel Haack and Steve Lewis. I love this. I love this. This is a fantasy romance. About this prince and this knight. The prince is eventually going to become king, and his parents want him to find love. So they start putting him in situations where he's going to meet all these princesses so that he could find his wife. He's really struggling because he's not finding the right person for him. He's on his trip with his parents to meet more girls to hopefully find a wife when his kingdom is threatened by a dragon. And so he goes back to save the kingdom, and in the process, he and a knight have to fight this dragon. And of course, then the story goes from there. And it's an amazing book with LGBTQI plus representation. It's in poetic form, and people did say that they hated the poetry in this and they didn't think it flowed well. I actually thought it flowed much better than some of the other poetic children's picture books I've read. I liked the poetry. It didn't bother me at all. And so it may not work for everyone, so that's something to put out there. But this is an example of what I meant when I said last week about an adventure story that has the highs and the lows and the emotional connection that you have with the main characters. I loved all these characters. In this short little book, I really loved so much about what happened in this story. And this was really positive. There wasn't a bunch of negativity. There was acceptance for these characters. And although I think it's important in books to show challenge and show some of the struggles that we go through as human beings, I also think it's important to have representation that also focuses on regular positive stories. And that is seen a lot in straight romances or straight stories, straight fairy tales, but you don't get that a lot in LGBTQI plus representation. There's always that barrier of this is the struggle I have to go through because society doesn't accept me. And as much as that may be true about our society, I think it's important to have representation in books that spans many different stories with different outcomes and different experiences. And sometimes the struggle isn't necessarily that you're not going to be accepted for who you are. And so that's an example where this story may have seemed too good to be true, but why can't it be? This is a fairy tale. This is what we see in fairy tales between male and female characters all the time. Like, why can't it be true for our prince and knight? So I loved this for that. I loved the artwork in this. I really thought it was charming and beautiful, and I thought it was fun and funny in certain ways, and I just enjoyed this book so much. So if you get a chance, pick up The Prince and Knight. This is the kind of fantasy I enjoy when it comes to picture books. So that's it, and I'm really excited because we're getting close to the end, and soon I will be able to compare my #1 books for every week and see what my all-time favorite children's picture book of this process has been. I can't wait. I can't wait. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you can see what happens on week #8. It's coming up. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later.